I have some good news and some bad news to share about this ongoing pandemic that is caused by the coronavirus. See, whenever anything happens which creates some sort of a destruction, some sort of an upheaval, war, and deaths, then one planet that is involved always is Pluto. Pluto entered into an exaltation point into the zodiac sign Capricorn in October 2019. And I wrote a Facebook post saying that, there could be some popular deaths. But I never anticipated that death itself as a concept is going to get become very popular in the in the coming months. I shouldn't be surprised, because Pluto as a planet itself indicates war, death, and destruction. Anyways, to understand as to what kind of a impact will the coronavirus have on us, we need to actually go back and see as to what happened when Pluto entered into various zodiac signs, especially when it gets exalted. Pluto gets exalted in four zodiac signs, which is Aries, Gemini, Leo, and Capricorn. There was this bubonic plague which happened between 1347 to 53. 200 million people were infected and 100 people died. That is about 50% mortality rate. And shockingly, at that point of time, the planet Pluto had just entered into Aries and it was placed at 0 degrees. Now, see, what we need to understand is that the Pluto need not necessarily cause only a pandemic. It can also create other kind of problems. For example, the last time when Pluto entered into Aries and it was in 0 degrees, it happened in 1845, and the Great Famine happened in Ireland, and almost a million people died in that. Now, what we also need to understand is that it's not about the 0 degree when Pluto just enters in, but also when Pluto reaches somewhere around 10 degrees, it becomes even more deadly and dangerous. Okay, we talked about Aries. Now, when Pluto enters into Gemini, the last time it happened was in 1914 to 1920, and this was the time when Pluto was somewhere around 10 to 12 degrees. And what happened was the World War. The World War One happened, and also immediately after that, there was the Spanish flu, another pandemic which happened, and about 500 million people were infected, and 50 million people died in that. And some of us would also remember that in that Spanish flu, about 18 million Indians died. Okay, then the Pluto moved into Leo, and that was during somewhere around the 1948-50 time. And this was a time there was no pandemic, but then there was something even more dangerous happening. The wars were happening. India was at war with Pakistan over Kashmir, and even elsewhere there was this the war happening with China. And by the end of it all, okay, there was this Republic of China that formed, and then India also became a democracy. And now Pluto has entered into Capricorn, and now it is in 0 degree, and it has created this pandemic due to coronavirus. So, what kind of a danger is it going to pose, and what to what extent is what we're going to see now. But before we get into that, I just want to ask a question as to why. Why do you think that Pluto is creating such kind of a damage? Why? If we need to understand why does Pluto create such kind of havoc, then we need to look at some more keywords which are connected with Pluto. Pluto not only does death and destruction and war, but then Pluto is also responsible for something very interesting, and that is the renewal, the rebirth, and reset. See, Pluto causes all of these things after this huge havoc is done. Then there is a change and there is a transformation. Let's go back into history and see what happened. See, after this bubonic plague, which happened because of Pluto's entry into Aries, I mean, Aries is a very violent zodiac sign, so obviously it creates everything which is really devastating. And there was a huge population erosion, but what it led to was there was a reforestation. And in fact, even there was a cooling of Earth, and scientists call this as a ice age. It's a mini ice age. It was violent, but it was finally it was good for mankind. So when we go to the time when the Spanish flu and the World War II happened, there was a huge shortage of doctors and medical staff at that point of time. And women, for the first time, were introduced into the workforce as paramedical staff. Now, that is something very, very interesting. Now, Pluto entered into Gemini, and Gemini is a zodiac sign which indicates education. And that is exactly the reason why the women folk started attending colleges after this World War, and they entered the workforce. The 1957-58 flu was responsible for the death of more than 4 million people, but then what it resulted in was that there was a huge surge in the entire vaccination process. Let's understand that Pluto entered into the technically advanced zodiac sign Leo, and which led to so many advancements in the medical field and vaccination and stuff, and which actually ultimately resulted in the last 50 years, you will see that the life expectancy of the human beings has gone up. And now that is another huge reset. In fact, very interestingly, I was also looking at the fact that even when Pluto gets into debilitation zodiac signs in 0 degrees, it causes some sort of a reset. In the year 1981, the AIDS was discovered. And you know what happened? Pluto had entered into Libra. And Libra is a planet which rules love. And we were all into irresponsible love, and the result was AIDS. And then there again is a huge reset. Okay, now what is going to happen after Pluto has entered into Capricorn? To understand that, what we need to do is let's go back into time and see as to what happened when the last time Pluto entered into Capricorn. What you see is the year is 1773, and in that year, the American War of Independence was going on. There was a lot of death, a lot of destruction, but then United States of America was born in the year 1776 after about 3 years. And the America went on to show to the world how, after all of this destruction, you can actually build an economy. Many of the people were moving towards this huge American dream, and America led the way. And after America came in, we all people, I mean, everything about stocks and economy and all of those talks came in after the United States was born. So that is again a huge reset. So coming back to the year 2020, we all know that Pluto is already in Capricorn and it is in 0 degree. And we all know now that it is extremely powerful. So, how long is the impact going to be there? If I go back in history and check, I have seen that the effect of Pluto being in 0 degree lasts for around 8 to 10 months. So this started in October last year, so which means we can expect this entire pandemic to slowly die down after June, July. So the impact is going to be there till June, July, and that is actually not a very good news. So, is it going to kill all of us? No, not at all. Let me give you the astrological reasons as to why this will be really really mild. There are two reasons. Number one is that Pluto has entered into Capricorn, which is a much milder zodiac sign compared to an Aries, which is huge and violent. And before I talk about the deaths, I need to tell you something very, very important. Okay, by what do we understand by death itself? A person cannot die before your time has come, and if your time has come, then you don't have a choice but you have to go. But in what way you're going to die is also very clearly mentioned in your chart. You can see in your chart if a person is going to die of old age, if you're going to die of accident, if you're going to die of a disease or some problem happening to your heart or kidney or your lungs. All of those things are seen very clearly in the chart. So even if you're going to die of coronavirus, even that has to be seen in the chart, and only then you can die. So coronavirus means it's a communicable disease and it impacts your respiratory system. So which means the third house has to be impacted, and it's a disease, so which means the sixth house has to be impacted, and you die of unnatural causes, which means the eighth house has to be involved. So only if there are so many complexities and if there is a very bad set of planets in your chart, and only then you will die. Otherwise, you are not going to die. Okay, some of us will be infected, but then that does not necessarily mean that you're going to die. In fact, it has been very, very clearly proven that there is only a 0.1% mortality. So even if you're going to be infected, even if 1 million people are going to be infected, the people who are going to die will be only in thousands. I want to put this entire death thing in some important perspective. Now, let's look at this list. This list gives you the death of the annual number of deaths that happen due to various causes. Now, let's say that the pandemic is going to kill a few lakh of people. Let's say even 1 million people die. Okay. Now, if you look here, 17 million people are dying because of cardiovascular diseases. 10 million people are dying because of cancer. 4 million people are dying already because of respiratory diseases. And 1 million people are dying because of road problems and also HIV. We all are suddenly panicking and we're all wearing masks. But you know what? If you've been wearing our seat belts and condoms, at least 2 million people will die less every year. See, if you look at this, if you add up all of this huge list, you will see that 50 million people are dying every year. That's a huge number. And even if 1 million people die in this pandemic, it is only a fraction compared to this 50 million unnatural deaths. I'm talking about unnatural deaths which happen besides the regular deaths of natural causes. Now, what we need to understand is that, why I'm saying that there won't be a large number of deaths? Simply because of two reasons. Number one, as I said before, it's going to be in Capricorn. Pluto is in Capricorn, and Pluto in Capricorn acts like a father. The father wants you to get back to the roots, and the father wants you to behave properly. And that is the reason the deaths will be less. And secondly, what the modern man has done is that you can see that this huge number of people are dying anyways. So for Pluto, the quota of death is already happening. So 50 million people plus 1 million, it's not making it is already, the numbers are already adding up. So for Pluto, the job has been already made easier. In fact, you know what Pluto is actually doing to us? It is not killing us by literally killing us, but it is killing us by doing something else. And that is, you know what? There are no wars now, but still we are in situation almost like as if it's a war. We all are quarantined in our own homes. It's like it's a curfew everywhere. You are quietly sitting and you are very very scared of your life. All of these things happen during wars, during upheavals, and more than that, many of our businesses are collapsing. Most of us are losing our money. Most of us are losing our income, and that is even bigger death than death itself. So Pluto is already doing its job. Pluto has already done its job. So that's the reason the death numbers are not going to be so huge. The chances of you and I dying because of all of these diseases is much more higher than you and I dying of this coronavirus. So now finally we're going to talk about the reset that Pluto is actually creating after creating this huge havoc. The benefits of the coronavirus has already been well documented. You can see that there are lesser people on the roads, there are cleaner roads, greener environment, the environment is clearing up, there is a cleaner air, there is a lesser pollution, and suddenly the companies have woken up to the fact that the employees can work from remote areas and they can still be productive. If this is going to continue, in fact, the organizations would actually be interested in continuing this because they can realize that there are lesser costs. And if this is going to happen, what will happen is we are going to have better lifestyle. We will spend more time with the family. There is a better work-life balance, and people will move away from the cities and they will go into greener areas, and there will be more happiness around. In fact, all of this can actually lead to a very important reset, and that is, all of these cardiovascular diseases which comes because of all of this modern day pressure and the lifestyle that we have created for ourselves. Maybe all of these things will come down. Maybe that could be the reset that Pluto is doing for all of us. Let's understand that Pluto is a stern father. Pluto wants us to go back to the roots, and Pluto wants us to learn the right habits, and that's exactly what we need to do. So sanitize, do all the right things what the government is asking you to do, and the WHO is asking you to do, but don't panic. So once reset is about the environment, the other reset will happen in our economy. We know that the economy is in shambles. We can see that the Sensex is down, the international markets are down. But what will happen is that exactly like the roaring 20s, which happened after the World War One, similarly, something beautiful can happen in economy even in this time. So after this coronavirus is over, the markets will be down, but then they will surge back and they will bloom into something beautiful, and it will benefit all of us. So by the end of it all, I would say that this coronavirus will end up doing more benefit to us than harm. So the good news is that very few of us are going to die because of coronavirus. But the bad news is that many of us are going to continue to die because of all of these diseases and the unnatural causes that has been listed here. The coronavirus is asking us to go back to the roots, and let me end this with a namaste.